Hello and welcome to the channel. This is the fourth episode where early graduation, a unique bloodline, and an insane teacher set the stage for Naruto's shinobi career. Determined to live life on his own terms, Naruto's knack for taijutsu forces him to ask whether he can truly be a shinobi of Konoha or will he be pushed away forever. Please like and subscribe for more epic adventures. Now, let us begin. Are we going to talk about it? I don't know what you mean. Naruto. Kakashi. The Jounin raised an eyebrow at him. Naruto mirrored him. Kakashi folded his arms. Naruto copied him again. He was not going to lose this game. He knew exactly what Kakashi was talking about, but he was not going to engage. It was none of his business, and he already had to avoid the topic around Gai-sensei. Kakashi was supposed to be easy and not care about stupid things like this. Occasionally the Jounin would bring up personal questions, but Naruto thought he'd managed to get the man to take the hint. He did not want to talk about it. Guy is worried about you. He narrowed his eyes but remained silent. That was a low blow. They stared at each other for another long moment. You are going to have to talk to them at some point, Kakashi sighed, showing the first sign of weakness. You share a teacher with them. No, I don't, Naruto snapped back. They're not my team, not my problem. Kakashi lifted his hand to rub his forehead wearily and Naruto almost growled at the Jounin. I didn't come here to be fucking judged, he fumed. I was under the impression that we were going to work on ninjutsu, which would make sense since you are my ninjutsu teacher, but apparently not. So find me when you are ready to work instead of sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. He turned to stomp his way out of the clearing but stopped as his name was called. Fine, I'll drop it. Kakashi raised his hands in defeat. Naruto nodded but he didn't relax. The Jounin was fond of a sneak attack. He walked back over to stand in front of him, waiting for him to continue. You still can't do Bunshin, can you? Nope, Naruto shrugged. He'd never been able to do it. His clones always came out looking sickly and faded no matter how many times he practiced the technique. There had been a minor improvement after he'd improved his chakra control with Guy, but not enough to make a difference. He wasn't that bothered about it since he didn't like the technique that much anyway. He had other things to focus on. I may have a different technique for you. Naruto waited for him to continue. The only thing is that it can be incredibly dangerous, Kakashi said with a seriousness Naruto hadn't seen in him before. It requires a lot of chakra and very little control, which is why I thought of you, but it requires a lot of chakra. You need to be careful when and how you use it. Do you understand? Yeah, loads of chakra, Naruto waved him off. Chakra had never been an issue for him. He'd never even come close to using up his reserves before. Kakashi sent him a look and Naruto rolled his eyes. I understand that this technique requires a lot of chakra, he recited dully. I should be careful when using it. He could tell Kakashi picked up on the fact that Naruto could not care less, but the Jounin left it alone, moving on. It is called Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he said. It is a clone technique that allows you to make solid copies of yourself via chakra constructs. Your chakra will be divided equally between the clones. If you make one, your chakra will be halved. If you make two, they will each have a third, and so on. Why would this be an issue? Naruto was going over the possibilities in his head. Solid clones? Clones capable of taijutsu? There was so much he could do with that. Would the clones hold up after one blow? Would the amount of chakra influence the stability of the clone? How many hits could one take? How much autonomy would they have? If they were chakra constructs, could they also use ninjutsu? Naruto. The Jounin said his name with a hint of amusement, as if he could see the possibilities blooming in his head. What would the issue be with the chakra division? It's divided evenly. Naruto furrowed his brow in thought. So if you made 10, and went down to a tenth of your reserves, that might be below what you need to stay alive. Kakashi, I smiled. Correct, my cute little genin. Naruto let that one slide. Even making one, I would lose half of my reserves. Yes, Kakashi agreed. It's a risk. Does the benefit of having an extra pair of hands outweigh the danger of losing so much chakra? It would limit your use of ninjutsu for the rest of the fight. Naruto grinned. What are the hand seals? Kakashi lifted his hand to show and Naruto mimicked him. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A puff of smoke appeared next to Kakashi and Naruto looked at the identical clone with interest. He couldn't see any difference between them, none of the telltale signs that could be seen in the ordinary Bunshin. He reached forward and poked the clone curiously. The clone tilted his head at him in a way that was scarily identical to his teacher and poked him back. Is there any way to tell the difference? He asked, looking for any signs himself. Their behavior sometimes, Kakashi shrugged. They are never really used long enough for issues like that to come up. There was another puff of smoke as Kakashi let the technique go. Naruto grinned widely as he raised his hands. Naruto, wait dash, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A massive cloud of smoke erupted around them. He felt a dip in his reserves, but it wasn't so bad. He felt fine, not spent or anything. It certainly wasn't as bad as Kakashi was trying to make him think. He would replenish the losses in a few hours at most. Had he not made enough? The smoke started to clear around him and he stared at the crowd of clones that surrounded them. They were everywhere, in the trees, bushes, sitting on rocks, standing around the clearing, and they all looked identical to him. He had no idea how many there were, just staring at the sea of orange. There had to be at least 100. He had a feeling that wasn't supposed to happen, and as he looked at a rigid Kakashi, he was pretty sure he was right. How much chakra did you put into it? His voice was a bit faint, but most of his expression was hidden by his mask. Don't know, Naruto shrugged. A normal amount. There was a noise from Kakashi that Naruto couldn't identify, but Kakashi was already asking more questions before he could try. How do you feel? Faint? How are your reserves? Fine, Naruto looked back at him, a bit confused. I could probably make way more. I wouldn't really notice that little chakra missing. There was a moment of silence and Naruto let the technique go, coughing slightly at the sheer amount of smoke released. As it cleared, he caught a look in Kakashi's eye that spelled doom. Looks like we are going to have to work on your control if you think that is a normal amount of chakra. Naruto groaned. Chakra control always came back to bite him in the ass. You have got to be kidding me. Hiruzen sighed, gazing at the young genin as he fumed in front of him. He felt for the Uzumaki, but it simply wasn't a possibility this year from him to attend the Chunin exams. This had been a sore point for the genin the past few years, but Hiruzen couldn't change the rules for one genin. This isn't fair. It is not a matter of fairness, Naruto-kun, he said, keeping his tone level. You do not have a team, therefore you cannot attend the exams. You knew this. Yeah, but there are supposed to be teams that I can fill the gaps on, Naruto insisted. There are teams where one became a Chunin and the others stayed genin. That's what the genin reserve is for. You are correct, however there are no teams available this year. There's never any teams available. Hiruzen sighed again. This argument came up every year. Naruto-kun, you are only 11. You are still younger than most academy graduates. You have time. Most spend 2 to 3 years as a genin after their graduation from the academy, so you are not falling behind. You are still very much ahead of your peers. People from my academy class became a Chunin last year. So sorry, Hokage-sama, but I am very much behind. Hiruzen blinked at the use of his title. Naruto had been using Jiji less and less frequently as of late, but he also knew that Naruto did not use his title with the respect it was intended. He had heard good reports from Guy about the genin's training and was aware he was receiving additional training from Kakashi and Hayate, but it hadn't done anything to improve the genin's relationship with people as a whole. The latest he'd seen in Naruto attitude towards Guy's genin team had been less than promising, and it made Hiruzen wonder if he'd been too lenient on Naruto. There were not many people he would have bent the rules for to this extent. Allowing the boy to be apprenticed to Guy rather than join a standard three-man squad may have been more detrimental for his development as a shinobi. He had a valuable bloodline limit, but he did not possess the will of fire like his parents. There had been nothing in the reports for his missions where he did work with other shinobi to suggest he was not working well or doing his part, but this was not what Hiruzen had hoped for. Naruto. Are Guy-sensei's team getting to go? Naruto interrupted. They turned down the opportunity, preferring to build their skills for next year. So they could have gone if they wanted to? Naruto scoffed and Hiruzen narrowed his eyes. That is enough, Naruto. He ordered, watching the genin flinch at the steel in his tone. I will not have this argument with you again, and I will not tolerate this disrespectful attitude of yours. I am your Hokage and you are my shinobi, is that understood? Yes, Hokage-sama, Naruto grumbled, dropping his head to stare at the floor. It really did appear as if Hiruzen had been too soft on the boy. It was fine when he was younger, but he had been a genin of Konoha for over 2 years now. He needed to learn to work with the system and his fellow shinobi instead of sulking when things did not go his way. He needed to do what he should have done when the boy graduated. When the new academy class graduates in January, you will be joining one of the teams, he ordered, Naruto's head snapping up. Your apprenticeship with Gaikuin will be dissolved, although you may train with him on your own time at the discretion of your Jounin sensei. You will take the Chunin exams with this team when your Jounin sensei decides both you and your teammates are ready. I have to join a team of green genin. Naruto sounded horrified, but Hiruzen steeled his heart. This was for his own good. You will have a team to take the Chunin exams with. Naruto's mouth opened and closed as he froze in place, struggling to compute Hiruzen's words. I'm going to lose Guy-sensei? He asked, a lot quieter. Gaikuin has other responsibilities, Hiruzen responded. He has his own team to manage. He has done incredibly well with you and your taijutsu abilities have soared under his instruction, but that is something you can work on under your new Jounin sensei. He sighed at the sight of the crushed genin. This isn't a punishment, Naruto-kun. You should have been placed on a team when you first graduated. I thought being a solo apprentice would help you more, but it has become evident that I was wrong. You are being treated like any other genin, just a few years late. Hiruzen felt the lie in that statement, but he ignored it. This was the right decision. If he had treated Naruto like any other genin 2 years ago, they would not be here now. Is that everything, Hokage-sama? Yes, you are dismissed, Naruto-kun. The door shut quietly behind the genin and Hiruzen realized he had been expecting a lot more anger from him. Naruto's issues surrounding the Chunin exams had always brought out his fury, and even dealing with other people, he was gruff and impatient. He did not know if the lack of anger was a sign that the boy had actually matured during his apprenticeship with Gaikuin, but the decision was made. Naruto would be joining a genin team in the upcoming year. It would be good for him. If he was ever going to actually become Chunin, it was something he needed to learn. Guy strode through the training ground, looking for his eternal rival. His wonderful genin team had completed their D ranks for the day and wished to work on their individual skills. Guy was thrilled to have such hardworking and youthful pupils, and he knew they would reach the springtime of their youth and blossom for the whole village to see. They were following in the footsteps of his first wonderful pupil. He finally spotted a sliver of silver hair in a tree and he grinned widely, running up the trunk to land on a branch nearby. His rival was sitting against the tree trunk, his legs stretched out in front of him on the branch with his ankles crossed. My eternal rival. He called out, Kakashi continuing to read his book. Did you say something, Guy? You are so hip, Kakashi. Kakashi sighed and placed the book on his lap, looking at him. This is about Naruto, isn't it? Guy dropped to sit down on his own branch, swinging his legs. He knew he made the right choice coming to talk to Kakashi. He knew Naruto well and had been training him almost as long as Guy. Kakashi had an entirely different perspective than his own. He hoped that his rival could see something that Guy was missing. Guy knew he had his faults as Naruto's teacher, but he wanted to do his best for his pupil. Naruto deserved nothing but the absolute best from him, and that meant sometimes looking to others to help. "You are so insightful, my rival," he said, his cheerfulness fading as thoughts returned to his apprentice. "Tell me, you have seen it too. He's totally avoiding that team of yours." "I do not understand why," Guy insisted. "He is a wonderful genin and there is much they can learn from him. They look up to him as a shining example of the power of youth. I do not understand where it keeps going wrong for him." It was frustrating. Guy could not see why Naruto and his team could not work well together. Naruto had a lot of experience and wisdom to share, and his genin team could provide a source of friendship for his apprentice. He knew his genin team did not judge or dislike Naruto. Lee had stated several times how much he looked up to the younger genin. He never had any friends or family, and everything he got from the village was negative, so he learned how to deal with that. He never learned how to deal with people normally in non-negative situations. Guy frowned. He assumes the worst in people, not because of his own actions, but because of his own experience. "We probably haven't helped." "Yes, we provide him with some normalcy and positive experiences, but we roll with Naruto as he is. He likes us and respects you at least, so he makes an effort. He doesn't see a reason to do that with anyone else, as he'd never been given a reason. You following me?" "I am, but I have only experienced Naruto as a hard-working, earnest young man. He is direct and does not enjoy empty words, but those are strengths of his. Why would my team not see the same?" "You have a pretty unique perspective, Guy." Kakashi shook his head fondly. "The problem with your genin is that Naruto doesn't know how to read them. He can't easily pick up emotions or cues, as he's just never learned. At the same time, they also don't know how to read him. He doesn't respond to things or think about things like they do. Something that is normal for them might not be for Naruto, and vice versa. He's fine with you since you're pretty open and straightforward about everything that goes through your head." "They are unable to connect," Guy continued for him. "They misunderstand each other and do not realize they are misunderstanding each other, as they view the other as the same. They do not realize they have different ways of communicating." "Now you're getting it," Kakashi nodded. "It's not that any of them were deliberately being difficult, they just can't relate to each other. Another problem is that Naruto's response to an unknown social situation is to get angry and defensive. He assumes that he is going to be blamed, so he pushes them away and ends it then and there. He then avoids it like his life depends on it to protect himself." Guy nodded, thoughtful. Now his rival had pointed it out, it did make sense. Naruto had avoided him when he thought Guy was angry at him. He was currently avoiding his genin team after the discussion of training went wrong. He could see it was no fault of Naruto's or his team's, but it didn't fix the issues that had caused the rift in the first place. "You've done a great job with him, Guy," Kakashi added. "I don't think there are many people who could have gotten him to open up this much. He really respects you. This is just something that will take a while. Naruto-kun has never done anything less than his best while training with me," Guy smiled. "He is a wonderful pupil, and I am blessed every day to be his teacher. He is determined, intelligent, focused, strong, and never gives less than 100%. I have learned as much from him as he has from me. He is a shining example of the springtime of youth to all of Konoha." He meant every word. Naruto had a lot to overcome, more than anyone at his age, and it has been a privilege to be a part of his journey. He looked forward to many years of training and working with his pupil, and he knew Naruto would achieve any goal he set his mind to. "Never change, Guy," Kakashi huffed in amusement, leaning back against the tree. "So what can I do to help them?" Kakashi shrugged his shoulders. "I really don't know." Naruto shuts down any attempt to talk about it. "It might just take time. Keep doing what you're doing and hopefully it works itself out. I do not like that I am unable to do more, Guy frowned. It is not very youthful. They're young, Kakashi crossed his ankles once more. They'll figure it out. You just have to be patient, something for you to work on too. Guy looked at his friend for a long moment. You would make a wonderful Jounin sensei, my rival. Kakashi snorted. Yeah, he said, although it was obvious he didn't believe it. That's why I fail them every year. You have your reasons, Guy insisted. You know if they are ready for the trials that come with becoming a shinobi and you would not fail them with a deceptive heart. You only wish the best for them. Becoming a shinobi is not part of their journey, you merely wish to keep them alive. You make it sound much better than it actually is. Perhaps you are waiting for the right team. Guy grinned. I could not imagine my life without my dear Genin, all four of them are irreplaceable. Kakashi chuckled, shaking his head fondly before tilting his head thoughtfully. Hey, did you know how much chakra Naruto has? He asked suddenly. I am aware that he has a great store of it, Guy nodded. He has much more than any genin I have encountered before. But have you ever actually measured it or anything? Is there something you wish to address, Kakashi? I taught him Kage Bunshin, his rival said, leaning forward once again. He accidentally made at least 100. 100, Guy. That would kill anyone else. I asked him about it and he said he barely noticed the drain. Guy's eyes widened at the implications of Kakashi's words. He knew Naruto had been blessed with a large chakra store and had valiantly worked hard on his physical conditioning and chakra control, which would have naturally increased it. He had never heard of what Kakashi was talking about. Is it due to the QB? He suggested. I don't know, Kakashi shook his head. But I think we are seriously underutilizing it. We need to look over his training regime again. Guy was about to agree when a hawk landed on a branch above them. We'll talk after you see the Hokage. Kakashi brought his book back out. I'll be here. Thank you, my eternal rival. Guy grinned, throwing him a thumbs up. It is wonderful to know you are as invested in my pupil's training as I am. Naruto is fortunate to have someone as diligent as you watching over him. Just don't tell him that, Kakashi muttered beneath his breath, bring his orange book back up to read. I have a reputation. Guy left him to it, making his way towards the Hokage Tower, with a lighter heart than before. He may not be able to do much to help the relationship between his pupils, but he could continue to be his most youthful self and help his students strive to the springtime of their youth. Sasuke huffed as he walked to the meeting location. He only had 6 months left of the academy and it was 6 months too long. No one was taking it seriously. In every taijutsu spar, every jinjutsu tutorial, every single ninjutsu practice, he could feel the lack of discipline and motivation in his classmates. They were all content to float along the course, never bothering to push themselves, and Sasuke was sick of it. He put so much effort and training in and it all felt like it was wasted on them. Everything was designed to go at the snail's pace of his classmates. With every day spent in that hellhole, he could feel Itachi getting further and further away from him. When Itachi was his age, he was on the verge of ANBU. His brother graduated 5 years earlier than Sasuke and he knew from his experience with Naruto that it mattered. The blonde genin was in a completely different league to Sasuke's classmates and he knew a huge part of that was getting out of the academy and actually doing the shit they were training for. How was he supposed to ever beat Itachi when he was stuck memorizing stuff that would never actually be relevant for his actual shinobi career instead of doing something productive? He could not wait until graduation. Yes, he would be potentially stuck with a couple of dead weights, but he would get a Jounin sensei and missions and more time to train and get stronger. He would be moving forward, which is more than what he was doing right now. Right now, he felt like he was trapped, cursed to remain in the same place, despite the fact he knew he had the power to move forward. It wouldn't be so bad if he got someone like Naruto on his team. He could be an asshole, but he was strong. He didn't care that Sasuke was an Uchiha, only if he could beat him in a fight or what training they could do. He did not conform to the expectations of the village and he certainly didn't follow the crowd. Sasuke appreciated that. The rest of his peers were like sheep. If he suggested a training method to his classmates, they would fall over themselves to agree even if it was a bad idea. Naruto actually gave it some thought and would tell him to his face if it was shit or would suggest improvements. Sasuke respected hard work and ability and Naruto had that in spades. He also didn't hold back for Sasuke. If he knew how to do something, he wouldn't wait around for Sasuke to catch up. He would just forge on ahead and expect Sasuke to catch up in his own time. Sasuke loved that. Naruto made it feel like he was moving forward. He knew there were things Naruto got out of this arrangement too. Sasuke did not care about whatever stick the village had up their ass about Naruto. He took the blonde at face value and he knew Naruto appreciated that. Naruto was the only person Sasuke could trust to be upfront with him, and Sasuke was someone that Naruto could be himself around without having to worry about repercussions or offense. There was a freedom with each other that they couldn't get anywhere else. He had never expected it to become what it had, but he was also not going to question it. The less he thought about stuff like that, the better. He finally made it to the training grounds and spotted the genin in question sitting quietly in the center. He walked over to him, letting the tensions of the day drain from his shoulders. "Oi, Dobe," he called out and frowned as Naruto didn't respond. As he got closer and saw Naruto's face, alarm bells started ringing. Naruto looked miserable. Sasuke had seen him angry, annoyed, smug, joyous, thoughtful, vindictive but never miserable. He didn't know Naruto was capable of that. His default was always anger and always loud. "Naruto," Sasuke tried again, walking around to sit directly in front of the genin. Naruto didn't appear to hear him. He didn't even seem like he could see Sasuke. He waved a hand in front of his face and there was no response. What the fuck? Sasuke started to get nervous. This was not normal. He didn't know what to do. This wasn't something that had ever happened before. He knew Naruto had a list of issues longer than the Hokage Tower, but it wasn't Sasuke's problem. It had never affected their training before. He shoved at his shoulder, finally getting a reaction. Dull blue eyes gazed back at him. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Naruto blinked and some life started to return to his eyes, but there was still a weight to him, as if a dark cloud had settled on his shoulders. "I'm losing Gai-sensei." Sasuke frowned. "Is he dying or something?" Naruto shook his head. "Our apprenticeship is going to be dissolved and I'm being assigned to one of the graduating genin teams in January," he elaborated, sounding defeated. Sasuke ignored the little spark of hope that flared in his chest. Naruto could be his teammate. He could potentially have one less dead weight on the team. He could have an equal. "That's it?" He snorted derisively. "You made it seem like the world was ending." Naruto glared at him and something in Sasuke's gut loosened at the sight of the familiar anger. "You don't get it," he snapped bitterly. "Gai-sensei was the first person ever to treat me like a human being. He cares and thinks I actually matter. He's the best Jounin sensei in this damned village and now I'm going to get stuck with some asshole that probably won't even bother with me while Gai-sensei forgets me, too busy with his shiny, non-pariah genin." "Suck it up," Sasuke said bluntly. "Guy wasn't going to babysit you forever. If you are going to let a shit Jounin sensei hold you back, then you're not the person I thought you were." Naruto looked back at him in surprise and Sasuke rolled his eyes. "It's not as if you're losing him forever," he pointed out. "He's still going to be around the village and you can still talk to him and stuff. You're just being a melodramatic ass." Naruto went quiet for a moment and Sasuke waited for him to process. This is not what he wanted to be dealing with today. He knew Guy meant a lot to Naruto. He'd never heard a single bad word from Naruto about his Jounin sensei and the blonde was not the type to hold back. Naruto had been jealous of the new genin team Guy had taken on and Sasuke had been forced to listen to him whine about it for weeks. Sasuke also complained about his classmates, so he figured they were even on that front. I'm going to get stuck on a green genin team, Naruto pouted, but it was obvious that the depressive spell had worn off. Thank fuck. Sasuke never wanted to see him like that ever again. He didn't suit it. You might get put on a team with me, he couldn't help but point out, keeping his tone disinterested in case the dope got the wrong idea. Naruto raised an eyebrow at him, but for a brief moment, there was something warm in his gaze. It was gone before Sasuke could blink. I guess you're not the worst person to get stuck with. Sasuke glared at him while Naruto grinned. He shoved over the blonde, climbing to his feet. That was probably the closest he would get to Naruto saying he wanted to be on a team with Sasuke. It was pretty unlikely, but it would be cool. They could train like this every day. Sasuke shook those thoughts from his mind as Naruto bounced up, seemingly back to normal. He wanted to get some training done today and he didn't need any distractions. Naruto panted as his arms burned, sweat dripping into his eyes. Do not drop your arm, Hayate ordered from the side. A swordsman cannot afford to lower their weapon. It leaves an opening for your opponent and projects weakness. You must maintain your form, no matter the exhaustion or potential injuries. Naruto gritted his teeth and nodded, gripping the hilt tighter. Discipline is the most important thing for a swordsman to master, he continued to lecture, occasionally turning his head to cough into his shoulder. Form, technique, speed, power will all come with time but are useless without discipline. Run through the first set of katas. Naruto moved, swinging his sword in purposeful strokes, slicing the training dummy in front of him. He ran through the combinations in his head, the sword and the dummy becoming his whole world for a few minutes. He felt a whack on his shoulder and glanced at Hayate as he finished the last one. The Tokubetsu Jounin swung his wooden sword idly. You must focus, but you can't lose your awareness of your surroundings. The sword should feel like an extension of your arm. You would not need this much focus for controlling a limb. Naruto huffed. Right now the sword felt like a massive weight had been strapped onto his wrist. He didn't dare voice his thoughts. It was hard-going but effective. He could feel the improvement after every training session, and the last thing he wanted to do is appear ungrateful. He'd asked for the training in the first place, so even if it was grueling, he just had to suck it up. Hayate watched him for a long moment before he relaxed. You can stop for the day. Naruto slumped to the ground, panting heavily. He just managed to stop the sword bouncing off the ground. The last time he did that, Hayate had gone on to spend 3 hours talking about sword care and maintenance and the consequences of not doing it properly. All helpful information, but Naruto wasn't one for lectures. You're doing well, Hayate smiled at him. I think you're ready to try dual wielding next time. Naruto nodded, lacking the breath to respond verbally. He really needed to take a look at his physical conditioning. It evidently wasn't enough. He had thought that it would be similar to taijutsu, but kenjutsu was an entirely different story. There were so many things he had to think about and be aware of, but he loved it. There was a sort of peace when his mind was so overwhelmed he had no choice but to focus. Hayate was an interesting teacher. In general, he was pretty subdued. Naruto would even go so far as to say he was gentle by nature. He was calm, composed, and Naruto couldn't help but respond in kind. It was very different to Gai-sensei or Kakashi. He did censor himself more than he would with them, but he didn't feel weird about it. Things were straightforward, and while Hayate was quiet, he was not soft. He was an unrelenting teacher and demanded perfection from Naruto. He knew that it was a strict discipline anyway and that it could take years to properly master kenjutsu, but there was nothing patronizing or negative about the way Hayate critiqued him. It was all constructive and matter-of-fact, and Naruto appreciated that. What did you do to the poor kid today? They looked over to see Yugao making their way towards them, looking to Naruto with an amused grin. Her long purple hung past her shoulders and she wore a simple black sweater. Her warm brown eyes looked at Naruto with sympathetic understanding. He is an absolute taskmaster, she continued, crouching in front of him. He was this bad when he taught me too, and the worst part is none of our friends would believe it. You make it sound way worse than it is. Hayate defended himself, but the moment Yugao had arrived, he'd melted. They were so gone for each other, and while that wasn't Naruto's thing, it wasn't the worst thing in the world to put up with. I asked for the training, he said, finally getting his breath back. I would be more annoyed if he took it easy on me. Yugao ruffled his hair gently as he stood, and he shook her off, glaring half-heartedly. You've got a good student, she smiled over at the Jounin. I do. Naruto wasn't sure how to respond to the blunt praise, so he busied himself with wiping his sword down, coating it in a thin coat of oil before returning it to its sheath. He was supposed to work on taijutsu next, but he was fucking knackered. He might just inhale 10 bowls of ramen and have a nap. Is next Thursday okay for you? Hayate walked over to them. Yeah, Naruto confirmed, running over his plans for the next few days. I shouldn't be on a mission then. Hayate nodded as he settled next to Yugao, the backs of their hands brushing gently. Naruto rolled his eyes. That was his cue to go. He liked the pair, and they had a sense of serenity about them that he didn't get from any of his other teachers, but he had his limits. He remembered seeing them share a kiss before, and the discomfort at the sight still haunted him. Thanks, Hayate-sensei, he called out, turning to leave. Good work today. Naruto smiled to himself as he left the training field. He really did like them, but that was something he kept to himself. Couldn't have people thinking he was going soft. Niji entered the training grounds, hoping he finally had each distance that he could escape the prying eyes of the rest of his clan. He was limited in what he could train while in the compound, and if he was ever going to get strong enough to keep his promises, then he had to train skills that the clan would not approve of. He'd picked the training ground furthest from the village itself. Most never bothered to come out this far, so it was usually deserted. He spotted the orange eyesore almost immediately. He frowned as blue eyes turned to meet his, and a matching scowl appeared on Naruto's face. What are you doing here? Naruto glared. Don't the Hyuga have some super fancy training grounds you can use? They do, Niji said stiffly. I cannot use them for what I intend to train. Naruto considered his words, realization creeping into his gaze. You're totally rebelling against your clan. I am taking the opportunity to explore all training available to me, Niji replied coolly. It is no fault of mine that some of those options are not offered by the Hyuga clan. That's a bunch of fancy talk for saying yes, Naruto grinned sharply. Good for you, fuck the system. Niji rolled his eyes. The other boy was crude, which Niji would not normally appreciate, but there was something about the way Naruto approached things. He called Niji out on things that no one else would dare. His clan did not particularly care to dig any deeper, and his peers were often intimidated by him. It was almost refreshing, the way Naruto got to the heart of the matter with only a few select words. He had not seen the blonde around since the argument with Tenten. It had not impacted Niji in any way, but he had noticed it. How long do you intend to avoid my teammates? Naruto's grin dropped and he returned to scowling. What's it to you? You are a common topic of discussion, Niji replied, letting the distaste color his tone. I wish for them to drop it and move on, but they have got into their heads that they would like to befriend you. And you don't? Niji blinked at the question. He could admit to himself that Naruto understood him in a way no one else had been able to. Lee and Tenten considered Niji to be their friend, but he was not sure he reciprocated in the way that they wanted. He did appreciate them as his teammates, and they worked well together. They had their problems. Tenten was hesitant to speak up when she had alternative ideas to his own, and Lee constantly wished to fight him to prove some sort of point. He personally thought that Lee beating him in a fight was improbable, but it would have very little impact on Lee's future as a shinobi in the long run. I do not believe in wasting my time chasing people who do not want to be caught, he answered. I have never been one for friends as it is. Naruto raised an eyebrow, but his scowl vanished, replaced with a considering look. Niji could admit to himself that Naruto had a profound impact on his future as a shinobi, and there would always be a part of him that felt connected to the blonde, but he was also not about to turn into his teammates and mope when someone did not reciprocate. Niji had been alone for a long time and he was perfectly content that way. Good, Naruto nodded. I don't do whatever your teammates are after. There was a small voice in the back of his head pointing out that Naruto had been avoiding Tenten and Lee, not Niji, but he ignored it. Shall I pass on the fruitless nature of this endeavor to my team? Why do you gotta talk like someone stuck a manners book up your ass? Naruto crossed his arms. Talk like a real person. The Hyuga are a great and noble clan. Members must uphold the utmost decorum and etiquette as representatives of this legacy, Niji replied, almost verbatim to the teachers he had when he was younger. It would be a difficult habit to break considering it had been drilled into me since birth. Well, you're already rebelling against them, Naruto grinned wickedly. What's one more thing? Come on, swear or something. Niji lifted one delicate brow. Naruto had brightened up considerably and walked closer to him. Blue eyes shined at him eagerly. This is ridiculous. You saying you can't? Niji narrowed his eyes at the blonde. I most certainly can, you ass. Naruto laughed and Niji blinked at the openness of it. There was no underlying mischief or smugness or whatever Naruto usually did when talking to people. It was unguarded and unexpected. Oh, this is going to be fun, Naruto smiled widely at him. The Hyuga ain't gonna see what's coming. You seem to be enjoying this, he remarked. Any chance to stick it to the fuckers in charge, Naruto smirked. Now, how would the great and mighty Hyuga clan feel about their members learning ninjutsu? Niji immediately thought back to his clan jutsu instructors. There was a firm, if arrogant, belief that all the Hyuga could ever need was their clan techniques. The Byakugan was a great weapon and married perfectly with the style of taijutsu his clan employed. Niji himself had never seen any reason to look elsewhere for his fighting repertoire, but a part of him had wondered that if he had another card to play against Naruto, that the outcome of the fight could have been very different. If any members of the main branch found out, it would not end well. The Hyuga were very strict about the purity of their fighting style. Niji had never heard of any Hyuga using anything other than the clan techniques. He would have to be careful not use it around his clan members, but out on missions, there would be nothing to hide. He had promised himself to become strong and he could not do that if he limited himself to the narrow views of his clan. They would greatly disapprove, Niji said, a smile creeping onto his own face. It would be most unbecoming for a member of the clan to use ninjutsu. He could see the delight in Naruto's eyes at the prospect of chaos. Niji was not sure why he was agreeing to this or why he felt more at ease with the abrasive blonde than he did his own teammates. Perhaps it was the absence of any expectations. He decided not to think about it. He had more immediate concerns. I have so much I can teach you, Naruto clapped his hands together. This is going to be good. I can't wait to see their stupid faces. Niji had a feeling Naruto was up to more than teaching Niji some jutsu. He had heard of the blonde's pranking tendencies and vehement hatred of any and all authority and had an inkling that the Hyuga were in for a lot worse than one rebelling genin. He could not bring himself to care. You can't tell your teammates about this though, Naruto added. I can put up with you because you're an asshole, but I ain't dealing with those bleeding hearts. Niji frowned but let it go. He knew that he would probably be hearing a lot worse if he was going to be hanging around Naruto on a semi-regular basis. This is only for the purpose of training and defying the Hyuga clan, Niji replied. Nothing more, there is no reason for them to know. This was not what he had expected for today, but Niji refused to lose such an opportunity. He had vowed to become strong, and if that meant leaving some of the traditions and etiquette of his clan behind, he would do it. He would not let anything hold him back. Naruto closed his eyes as he savored the beautiful broth on his tongue. He inhaled deeply, the wonderful scent of delicious ramen taking over his senses for a blissful few seconds. The warmth of the gentle steam caressed his face and he smiled. He loved ramen. Everything was better with ramen. He opened his eyes as the flap to the Ichiraku stall was pushed to the side and the familiar voice of his teacher made its way to him. Naruto-kun. Gai-sensei grinned. Hi, Gai-sensei, Naruto replied before he turned his attention back to his bowl. May I have the heartiest bowl of beef ramen, Tucci? The ramen chef smiled fondly. Of course, Guy, he nodded, motioning to his daughter to start the order. How are you today? I am having the most youthful day. Guy laughed. A bowl of your ramen will only improve it further. Naruto knew that Guy didn't like ramen as much as he did, but he appreciated the effort. In fairness, no one liked ramen as much as Naruto did. He'd never complained once though in the almost 3 years of apprenticeship when Naruto wanted to eat here. He knew other people got sick of it after a while, although he couldn't fathom why, but Guy-sensei always came with him when he could. He would miss that when he got a new Jounin-sensei. Coming right up, Tucci tapped the bench and went to help Ayam. Naruto continued slurping up the heavenly noodles. This was the first time he'd seen Guy-sensei since the verdict was passed down by the Hokage. He didn't know what he was about to say. He had faith in Guy-sensei but small, hurt part of him thought his teacher might be grateful to be rid of him. He'd be able to focus on his real team then. I am sorry, Naruto-kun. Naruto coughed in surprise, noodles catching in his throat. He clamped a hand over mouth as he struggled to swallow, grabbing a glass of water and gulping it greedily. A large hand slapped his back strongly in an attempt to help and he lost the breath he'd just managed to get back. Are you okay, Naruto-kun? Guy-sensei asked frantically, standing and hovering over him. Shall I call a medic? I'm fine, Guy-sensei, he said hoarsely. What do you have to be sorry for? I have failed you as a teacher, Guy-sensei announced dramatically, but Naruto could hear the sincerity behind his words. I have not been able to nurture you to Chunin and I have been deemed a lacking Jounin-sensei by Hokage-sama. Naruto shook his head, unable to help his amusement. Of course Guy-sensei would take the news as if there was something wrong with him and not Naruto. The man couldn't think the worst of him even if Naruto burned down the village. He would probably cry about the brightness of Naruto's will of fire. It's not you, Guy-sensei, he swirled the noodles around the bowl. The Hokage just showed his true colors, is all. He's just like everyone else. Naruto-kun, Hokage-sama is trying to do his best by you. Guy-sensei didn't say it with as much conviction as he used to. Naruto knew there was an almost pathological need in every shinobi to defend and honor the Hokage. It came from being a military state. He didn't hold it against Guy-sensei, especially since he knew his Jounin-sensei tried to see the best in everyone anyway. I'm the QB container, he said bluntly, uncaring of anyone listening in. It was the worst kept secret in Konoha. If there is a chance to screw me over, people always take it. There was a moment of uncharacteristic silence and Naruto worried for a moment that he had finally broken Guy-sensei. Naruto-kun, you are the most hard-working, earnest pupil I have had the privilege of teaching, Guy-sensei said, his dark eyes serious. You are honest and direct and you do not compromise who you are for anyone. My only wish is that you know how brightly you shine and how much others look up to you, that you may open your eyes to the positivity around you instead of only seeing the negative. You have so much to offer, Naruto-kun, you are only in the dawn of your springtime of youth. A lump rose in Naruto's throat and he looked away from his Jounin-sensei. He couldn't listen to this. He wasn't any of those things. I'm not who you think I am, he blurted out, the truth pouring out of him. I hate this place. I hate their stupid festivals and markets and their stupid, judgmental looks. I hate that no matter what I do, no matter how helpful I am, no matter how much I avoid them, that the village will always hate me right back. I hate that even with the few people who I can tolerate that I feel like tearing down this village with my bare hands. I want to leave Konoha, Guy-sensei, and never look back. Just because he was learning from Kakashi and Heiei, training with Sasuke and Miji didn't mean his original goals had faded. He was grateful to them and he put the effort in, but he knew in his heart if he was given half a chance he would abandon them all without a second thought. He wasn't proud of it, but he couldn't be stuck here. He couldn't give up his chance at a life of freedom for anyone. He'd told Guy about this before, but he had never been sure that the man had understood. He knew he could be burning this bridge, but he couldn't have Guy-sensei thinking he was this great, loyal genin he boasted about. He owed Guy-sensei the truth before they went their separate ways. Naruto, I have always known about your goals and I respect your decision, Guy-sensei beamed, placing a warm hand on Naruto's shoulder. My goal was to make you feel as if you could stay if you wished to. I apologize for falling short. Guy-sensei was impossible. Naruto would miss him. Your ramen, Guy-san. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of Guy-sensei's beef ramen and Naruto took it as the reprieve it was. This was too much right now. It had been great being Guy-sensei's student, but he had to move forward. He would be leaving this village one day, and that included leaving Guy-sensei. He just had to think of it as leaving the man a little earlier than planned. Thank you, Tsuchi-san. Guy-sensei's smile sparkled. I look forward to cherishing your wonderful meals for as long as I can. Naruto didn't miss the look his Jounin-sensei threw his way. Naruto loitered outside of the doors of the mission assignment desk, trying to put off the inevitable. The Rinne festival was coming up, and that meant dozens of D-rank missions would be coming up. Naruto hated this time of year. He had been stuck with setting up the decorations every year since graduation, and none of his old tricks of getting out of it were going to work. Last year, he'd purposely dumped them in all the wrong places in terrible condition, and it just led to him being forced to remake them all. It took 3 days and he hadn't even gotten D-rank pay for it. The Rinne festival also signified the end of the year, and the academy graduations would be in 3 weeks. Sasuke hadn't stopped talking about it for ages, and Naruto was sure that if Sasuke could murder his classmates and get away with it, he wouldn't hesitate. He'd heard some horror stories, particularly about the so-called fangirls, and it just made Naruto grateful that he'd graduated ages ago. He couldn't imagine sitting in a classroom and tolerating that bullshit again. He'd recommended that Sasuke beat the shit out of them during taijutsu practice. The Uchiha hadn't taken him up on as far as he'd heard. He was ignoring the fact he would be forced onto a genin team. He had shit to do, and thinking about it wouldn't change anything. He still trained with Guy-sensei a few times a week, but he'd seen his Jounin-sensei a lot less in recent weeks. It was mainly Naruto's doing, since he figured it would be easier if there was some distance already established, but it also hurt, knowing that those days were numbered. He could shove the misery to the back of his mind if he avoided Guy-sensei, out of sight, out of mind. Guy-sensei had been busy with his own genin team anyway. They had started on C ranks last month, and it had made it that much easier to avoid them. It had been over 2 months since the incident in the training's grounds, and while the anger had long faded, Naruto was nothing if not stubborn. He did train ninjutsu with Neji occasionally, but that wasn't friendly. That was purely to stick it to the Hyuga clan. They always walked around the village like that had a silver spoon stuck up their ass, like they were better than everyone else because they happened to be born with some fancy eyes. Naruto and Sasuke were also born with some cool bloodline limits. The Hyuga weren't as special as they wanted to think they were. It was well known how much they prided themselves on using only clan techniques, so teaching Neji how to throw around huge as fireballs gave Naruto a spark of joy he only felt when pranking civilians. It had nothing to do with Neji himself. They did sort of get along by the fact they knew that they were there to get shit done, not be best buds, so Naruto tolerated him. He hadn't seen Tenten or Lee though, and he had no desire to seek them out. Naruto-senpai. He closed his eyes. Why had God forsaken him? What had he done? Surely he'd been punished enough for a lifetime. Why would this happen to him? He hadn't physically maimed anyone recently, and he was nice to animals. Was that not enough to be granted just the tiniest bit of good karma? Naruto-kun. He opened his eyes and looked flatly back at Guy-sensei. He didn't look at the flock of genin around him. Guy-sensei. Here for the festival missions? The man asked cheerfully. Against my will, Naruto confirmed. What's so wrong with helping out with the festival? Naruto looked at Tenten, raising an eyebrow. He held the look long enough for her to become uncomfortable. She hadn't changed much from when he'd last seen her in the training grounds. He knew that he was being a bit dramatic now with his avoidance of them, but it was just easier. He didn't actually hold anything in particular against Tenten. Her view on his strength didn't actually matter. He was pretty sure she still couldn't hit him with a kunai, but whether it was from lack of skill or backbone didn't really concern him anymore. He didn't get the chance to answer before Lee cut in. It is an honor to be able to contribute to such an auspicious event. He grinned, his smile a pale imitation of Guy Sensei's. We should be honored that we can help the village celebrate and allow the will of fire to burn brighter than ever. Naruto took the other boy in, scanning the green jumpsuit, orange leg warmers and dumb bowl cut. He was the spitting image of Guy Sensei. He had predicted it a while back, but the boy had taken it even further than Naruto had thought. A spark of anger flared his chest at the sight, although he couldn't pinpoint why. If you say so, knock off, he answered dismissively. Wasn't it enough they got to keep Guy Sensei? They didn't even realize how lucky they were, and Lee didn't even have the decency to have an original thought. He didn't deserve Guy Sensei. He could copy any other jounin in this dumb village. Guy Sensei deserved better than some knockoff that was too busy trying to crawl up his ass than become a good shinobi. Niji was decent and Tenten was questionable, but at least they relied on their own strengths. They didn't try to copy someone they could never measure up to in any reality. He knew his feelings for the boy were evident on his face, but he wasn't going to be Guy Sensei's student anymore. He had no obligation to be nice to this moron. Guy Sensei would be delighted to have a carbon copy, but his teacher wouldn't be tricked into favoring Lee like that. Naruto knew Guy Sensei better than that. Naruto. Tenten began, but she stopped short at the glare he sent her way. Maybe he was wrong about the anger having long faded. The longer he was around them, the more the urge to snap Lee's neck crept up on him. Naruto-senpai, we heard you are being placed on a team of your own. They shall be most fortunate to gain someone with your experience. Lee grinned and Naruto clenched his teeth. There was no way he didn't know what he was doing. He just had to fucking rub it in Naruto's face that he lost Guy Sensei and they had him all to themselves. Guy Sensei had been the first person to meet him where he was at and see him for who he was. He liked Naruto as a person, even when Naruto knew he was being a shit. He even accepted Naruto's ambitions even though they went against his own. Guy Sensei always saw the best in him, and he knew his new Jounin Sensei would be different. He would never have what he had with Guy Sensei, and this asshole wanted to flaunt it. Go fuck yourself, he snapped. He was too wrapped up in his fury to notice Guy Sensei's disapproving look. I'll shove those leg warmers up your ass. Naruto-kun, that's enough. He took a step back at Guy Sensei's words. It wasn't fair. He was pretty used to being punished for shit that wasn't his fault, but this felt like the worst so far. He would not stand for Lee rubbing his face in it, not even to avoid disappointing Guy Sensei. I'm done with him anyway, he spat. He turned away from the quiet team and stomped through the doors, swiping the first scroll held out to him and diving out the first window he saw. He hadn't been this angry in a long time. He crumpled the scroll in his hands at the thought of losing Guy Sensei to that fucker. He could imitate Guy Sensei as much as he wanted. It didn't mean he would have even a fraction of the man's skill. The kid couldn't even beat Naruto. Naruto steeled his resolve. He vowed that no matter what idiots he got stuck with on his new team, he was going to make damn sure he could still wipe the floor with Team 9 on any given day of the week. He would show them that no matter how long they stayed with Guy Sensei, Naruto would be the best damn pupil the man would ever train. Niji sighed as Naruto failed to appear yet again. He had not thought that the run-in with his team the other day would be enough to chase the other boy away entirely. Niji personally did not care about whatever Naruto had against Lee, but he was annoyed that it was interfering with his training. Naruto could at least have the decency to direct his ire at the true target of his rage. There had been no indications towards his outburst when they had first seen him outside the mission assignment desk's doors. He had been indifferent if a bit unimpressed, but it had not been until Lee spoke to him that Niji had seen the anger ripple across Naruto's features. He had not exactly done much to hide it. Niji was sure Naruto was reacting to Lee dressing like Guy-sensei, but he was unsure about why that would anger the blonde to such a degree. He did ask Naruto when they'd next met up for training, but he had not taken it well. He had begun ranting about pale imitations and disrespect towards Guy-sensei, yelling that dressing like Guy-sensei would not let Lee become half the shinobi Guy-sensei was. Niji had not seen him this furious since that very first fight with his team. Niji could admit that he had poked into the matter a bit soon. Upon asking why that concerned Naruto, the blonde had directed a venomous look his way, spitting some insult at him and vanishing from the training grounds. Niji knew Naruto's preferred method of dealing with things was avoiding them by any means possible, so he should have really expected for the blonde to abandon their training. He had such a short fuse and an ability to hold such a long grudge. Niji personally thought Naruto was handling this like a toddler who had their favorite toy taken from him. It was clear as day that he was jealous of Niji's team. They remained with Guy-sensei while he was thrust onto a team of Green Genin and an unknown Jounin-sensei. He could see how Naruto would think Lee was rubbing it into his face, but Naruto did not know Lee. He had never made the effort. He had never made the effort to get to know any of them really. Lee was not the type of person to do that, and while Niji found Lee to be insufferable at times with his naive enthusiasm, he could see that Naruto was the one in the wrong here. It was not their fault and they did not deserve his ire. He settled into a stance and began to run through hand seals. He would have preferred to keep learning new techniques, but he could spend time improving the ones he did know. It had been very strange learning ninjutsu, and it had taken some getting used to. His chakra control was excellent from his clan techniques, so it was more familiarizing himself with the hand seals and chakra requirements. He had not used them in front of his team yet, not quite happy with the quality of them. He had been the best in his class and the strongest of his year. Even if he was learning forbidden techniques, he would learn them well. When Naruto finally realized how childish he was being, Niji would show him his mastery of the techniques. He did not need the blonde. He kept the entrance to the training ground in his line of sight anyway. Sasuke tapped his desk impatiently as Irika-sensei shuffled the papers at his desk at the front of the room. He knew he would pass at the top of the class, and he had. The dumb exam hadn't even been a challenge. He'd had harder training sessions with Naruto. He couldn't wait to get out of this place and actually get stuff done. If he had to spend another day with these idiots, he might actually take Naruto's advice and spar them for real. Speaking of the blonde, he'd been weird the past few days. Well, weirder than usual. He'd been pretty sure Naruto was over whining about the whole guy situation, but something had caused it to all flare up again. He hadn't been insulting Sasuke or even responding to Sasuke's own, just trying his damn hardest to kill him. Not that he could complain. Part of the whole reason he hung out with the genin was that he wouldn't take it easy on him. He was the only idiot his age that gave Sasuke a challenge, and while the bruises from their latest spar still stung, Sasuke was satisfied with his progress. He was much faster than last year. Team 7 will be Uchiha Sasuke, Hirono Sakura. Sasuke groaned. He would never be free of her. All of his fangirls were annoying, but the pink-haired girl took it to another level. The way she screeched Sasuke-kun made him feel a bit sick. He always felt like he needed a shower after talking to them. And you'll have an already graduated genin join your team due to lack of numbers, Irika-sensei continued, and Sasuke's head snapped up, his heart in his throat. Uzumaki Naruto will be joining you, and your sensei will be Hatake Kakashi. Naruto was going to be on his team. He was going to have one competent member. He was sure he'd heard Naruto mention the name Kakashi before, usually to complain about him, but if Naruto knew him, then he couldn't be the worst. Naruto also wouldn't hold him back. He wouldn't have to continue going at the snail's pace of his now former classmates. With Naruto on his team, Sasuke could give his all and not have to worry about his team dragging him down. Yes, there was still the Sakura issue, but that wasn't just his problem now. Naruto wouldn't tolerate a fangirl that didn't pull her weight. Iruka-sensei read out the rest of the names, but Sasuke didn't bother listening. It wasn't like he would have to work with any of these dead weights again. Most of them will probably kick the bucket during a mission or something. The teachers gradually started arriving and Sasuke drummed his fingers impatiently on his desk. Where were they? He wanted to get out this building and never look back. Gods, wasn't that a thought? He would never have to attend the academy again. Soon the numbers dwindled and it was only Sasuke and Sakura left. He saw Sakura turn to him in the corner of his eye and he grit his teeth. "Where do you think they are, Sasuke-kun?" she asked in that fake sweetly sick voice. He'd heard her real one every time she yelled at Kiba or Ino, so he didn't know why she still tried. "Are they running late?" Sasuke rolled his eyes, vowing to stab Naruto as revenge for leaving him here alone. Where was he? Timing had never been a priority to the blonde, but Sasuke needed him to get here soon. Sakura looked like she was working up the courage for something Sasuke really wouldn't want to hear. The door finally opened with a slam and Naruto poked his head in, blue eyes narrowed. He met Sasuke's gaze and relaxed ever so slightly. "So I'm stuck with you," he strolled in, hands in his pockets. "Better not slow me down, Uchiha." "Whatever, Doge," Sasuke replied automatically, leaning back and crossing his arms. Naruto hadn't changed much over the years. He was still pretty short, which Sasuke made sure to point out at every given opportunity. He wore a black t-shirt, black shinobi pants with black sandals. His orange, sleeveless hoodie hung open in black, fingerless gloves had metal plating on the back of the hand. Orange-colored tape around his right thigh secured his kunai pouch and the bottom of his trouser legs. Sasuke hadn't quite believed it when he turned up with that orange tape. He couldn't think of where on earth he'd managed to find it, but it was just as likely that Naruto had colored it himself. He'd shaved down the sides and back of his head recently, leaving it slightly longer and spiky on the top. He was still not wearing his Hitai-8, but at this point Sasuke didn't think he ever would. "You can't speak to Sasuke-kun that way," Sakura yelled, pointing a finger accusingly at Naruto. The amusement vanished from Naruto's eyes as he looked at her. "The fuck are you?" Sakura gaped and Sasuke stomped on the urge to smile. "You can't talk to me like that." "That didn't answer my question," Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Whatever, I don't actually care." "Who's the Jounin-sensei? Did they not tell you?" Sasuke raised an eyebrow. "There was a scroll from the Hokage Tower, but I lost it before I could read it." Naruto shrugged and Sasuke translated that to mean Naruto had burned it the minute it arrived at his window. He was a bit more normal today, so Sasuke hoped that meant the whole guy thing had blown over. "Hatake Kakashi," he offered, rolling his eyes. Naruto blinked and Sasuke couldn't read his expression. The blonde definitely recognized the name, but he couldn't tell what he was thinking. "If he fails us, I'm burning his Ika collection," Naruto vowed darkly. "So you do know him? What's his deal?" They were interrupted by Sakura once again. "How do you know Sasuke-kun?" She was looking between them, confused. Sasuke didn't talk to anyone in class, actively avoided the possibility really, lest his brain dribble out of his ears from what inane childish things that were in fashion right now. None of his classmates had seen him talk to someone he actually respected. "I didn't drop him off the side of a building and I've regretted it ever since," Naruto replied completely deadpan and Sasuke snorted. He looked away at Naruto's knowing look. "Kakashi won't be here for another couple of hours." Sasuke sighed and stood. He wasn't going to wait around that long. "Sasuke-kun, where are you going? You're going to get in trouble." He ignored her as he walked down the aisle to Naruto. The blonde tapped the metal of his headband and Sasuke roughly shoved the hand aside. He didn't explain himself. Memories of Itachi doing that very same movement flashed behind his eyes and he scowled. Naruto held up his hands in surrender, looking at Sasuke questioningly, but he shook his head. Naruto immediately backed off and shoved his hands back in his pockets. "If we're not back before Kakashi shows his face," Tell him that we'll be around, he called back to Sakura. She had made a motion to follow them and stopped at Naruto's words. Sakura had always been a teacher's pet. She wouldn't risk pissing off their new teacher by disappearing. Sasuke walked through the door, delighted to know that would be the last time he would ever have to set foot in that classroom. Feels good, right? Naruto grinned at him knowingly. Sasuke shoved his shoulder against Naruto's but didn't deny it. He was going to be able to move forward and get stronger. He would kill Itachi and restore his clan. He was finally at the starting line. Kakashi popped his head into the classroom and blinked at the sight of the single genin waiting for him. She was pretty skinny and he could smell the perfume from here. Not ideal for fieldwork, and if she passed the bell test, that would be something to address. Where were the other two? Kakashi-sensei, the girl asked hesitantly, and Kakashi smiled. That's me, he said cheerfully. Where are the other two cute little genin? This guy just turned up and kidnapped Sasuke-kun, she cried, actual tears in her wide green eyes. I think they know each other or something, but he was really rude. He just left me here. She seemed genuinely upset. How nice to know that Naruto had introduced himself to his new potential teammate. He dreaded to think what he'd done to the Uchiha. He'd read the reports about Sasuke and the boy wasn't the most sociable. He was competitive and ill-tempered, which would not be the best match with Naruto. He predicted a lot of fights in this team, provided they passed, of course. Naruto had an advantage in that he knew all about Kakashi's method of testing new genin teams, but the boy wouldn't know teamwork if it slapped him in the face. He summoned Pakken and the pug appeared in a puff of smoke. Can you find Naruto and bring him the roof? He asked, still keeping the cheerfully tone as Sakura gaped at him. Make sure he hasn't maimed Sasuke. He is a wild pup. Pakken nodded his head and ran off. Kakashi beckoned Sakura to follow him to the stairs leading to the roof. What did you say about them knowing each other? He asked casually. They talked to each other like they did, but he was so horrible to both of us. He didn't listen to anything I said. Poor Sasuke-kun had to follow him. Kakashi had known the chaotic genin for a number of years now, and this was the first he'd heard that the kid might know Uchiha Sasuke. If he'd managed to hide it from him and Guy, because there was no way he told Guy and Guy didn't tell Kakashi, then he might have to reevaluate the kid's skills in espionage. Naruto and Sasuke were pretty well known in the village for very different reasons, and there would have at least been rumors if anyone had seen them talking. Did he threaten Sasuke at all? He said he wanted to throw him off a building. That was pretty in line with Naruto's usual antics, but usually it took a few meetings for him to reach that level of insult. He was mainly grumpy and uncooperative at first meetings. How interesting. He may end up passing a team this year. They reached the roof and Kakashi gestured for Sakura to take a seat on the steps. He leaned against the railing and it didn't take long for his summon to appear, Naruto and a very much intact Sasuke following behind. You're late, Kakashi commented, and Naruto threw him a sharp grin. How's it feel? He sniped back, dumping himself on the steps. Sasuke took a graceful seat next to him. Well, my cute little genin. He clapped his hands as he wiped the smirk of Naruto's face. Let's introduce ourselves one at a time. What are we supposed to say? Sakura asked innocently, and he didn't miss Naruto rolling his eyes. That could be a problem. Things you like, things you hate, dreams for the future, that kind of thing, he shrugged. Why don't you go first then? Naruto asked. I'm Hatake Kakashi, he said. Things I like, things I hate, I don't feel like telling you that. My dream for the future, never really thought about it. As for my hobbies, I have lots of hobbies. No, you don't. Naruto said loudly. Naruto, let's start with you. The genin crossed his arms but complied. I'm Naruto, I don't feel like telling you my likes and dislikes. My dreams for the future are none of your business. I have no hobbies. Kakashi stared at him as Naruto grinned back. He knew what the kid was like after being his ninjutsu teacher for years, and it appeared that gaining two new teammates wasn't going to change the way he acted around Kakashi. "You didn't tell us anything," Sakura accused. "I just followed my teacher's example," Naruto drawled, not even bothering to feign innocence. "Sakura, you next," Kakashi warded off that argument before it could begin. The girl perked up, a blush covering her cheeks. "I'm Haruno Sakura. The person I like, is," she stuttered, her eyes darting towards Sasuke. "My dream for the future is—" She broke off giggling and Kakashi sighed. Girls her age were more interested in boys than shinobi training. That could be a problem with Naruto on the team. He had terrible tunnel vision when it came to training, and he didn't understand when other people couldn't do the same. Kakashi nodded to the Uchiha who'd spent the entire introduction with his chin propped up on his fists, elbows on his knees. "My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I don't particularly like anything. I don't have dreams, I have goals. I will restore my clan and destroy a certain someone." It was as he feared. Sasuke was gunning for Itachi. He couldn't really blame the kid, but as things stood he didn't stand a chance. So his team this year was a fangirl, an avenger, and an uncooperative little shit. "First, we'll do what we can do with 4 people, Kakashi began his usual spiel, watching their reactions carefully while maintaining his bored facade. "A survival exercise. Of the 26 graduates, only 8 will be recognized as shinobi. The rest will have to return to the academy for another year." There was a moment of silence. "Sucks to be you guys," Naruto grinned and Sasuke punched him in the shoulder. "Shut up, dobe." "Huh, they did know each other." "Okay, you're dismissed. Meet me on Training Ground 7 at 5 a.m. tomorrow. Oh, and I recommend you skip breakfast. You'll throw up." He caught Naruto shaking his head at Sasuke as he hopped off the roof, leaving his new team to talk amongst themselves. What he had learned was Naruto did know Sasuke, for how long was completely in the air. He didn't know how Naruto managed to hide it, and while he had an idea why, it was still a little disheartening. He knew he'd managed to build some trust with the kid, but it evidently wasn't enough. He wasn't sure how it would work with him being the kid's full-time Jounin sensei, especially knowing how attached he was to Guy. He was getting ahead of himself. They had to pass the bell test first. Naruto trudged through the forest, cursing whatever gods were out there. Why he had to be the one to find that stupid cat he had no idea. He had thought that the solo D-ranks would stop when he was assigned to his new team, but apparently, he hadn't secured the latch on her cage properly, so it was still technically his mission. He'd handed Tora in 2 days ago. Next time he got his hands on some glitter, he was shoving it all into that paperwork Chunin's desk. It was bad enough he would be back to D-ranks with his new team. The new team wasn't as bad as he'd thought it would be. He knew Kakashi wouldn't treat him unfairly, but he wasn't the most proactive teacher. Naruto knew he would have to organize most of his own training sessions if he wanted to keep training at the level he was at currently. Sasuke would join him and thank the gods he had one teammate he could tolerate. Sasuke was as obsessed with getting stronger as he was, and he knew the Uchiha could handle himself. He still objected to the entire team concept, but if he was forced to be stuck with anyone, he would choose Sasuke. The problem lay with the pink-haired girl. Sasuke had told him all about the fangirls in the class, and while Naruto had listened to his complaints, he hadn't really considered that they would get one on the team. She looked like she hadn't met strength training in her life, and the stench of her floral perfume was unpleasant. He wasn't sure Kakashi would let that stand. His nose was way more sensitive. He didn't have high hopes for her, and there was no chance she was at the same level as Sasuke. He knew that they all technically had to pass the bell test to be a team, but part of him hoped that it could just be him and Sasuke to pass. He didn't want to drag around a dead weight. He groaned as he shoved aside another bush, no sign of the brown feline. This was the worst mission. He didn't know why the stupid woman didn't keep better track of it. If she really cared so much for its welfare, she would actually keep an eye on it instead of sending random genin after it every week. He stopped as he saw something that definitely wasn't Tora. It was a Konoha Chunin, but Naruto didn't recognize him. He was dressed in the standard uniform and Chunin vest, with a bandana like Genma's tied over shoulder-length white hair. He had a massive shuriken tied to his back and a large scroll under his arm. There wasn't anything particularly suspicious, but Naruto felt it in his gut. That guy was up to no good. No one trained in this area, and they were pretty far from the village itself. "Hey, have you seen a brown cat around?" he called out. "Red ribbon around its neck, pure evil in its eyes." The man turned to him and Naruto saw the moment he recognized him. It was always the same look of hatred in their eyes. "What are you doing here?" the man hissed. "I literally just said," Naruto glared back. "What are you doing out here?" "None of your fucking business, QB brat." The last words were spat with a venom Naruto hadn't heard in a while. They were interrupted by the sound of distant sirens. That was the fugitive alarm. It went off when there was a security breach. Naruto looked at Chunin in front of him and the way he tensed at the sound. "Don't suppose you know what that's about?" Naruto asked casually, but he subtly opened his kunai pouch as he did. "Should be for you, demon," the man hissed, looking increasingly tense as the alarm continued in the background. "It is a betrayal that you're allowed to live. You should have been executed the moment you were born." Naruto rolled his eyes. "How original. Guess that answers that." Before he had a chance to grab a kunai, the Chunin grabbed the massive shuriken on his back, flinging it at Naruto. He barely ducked in time, rolling to the side and ignored the metal sinking deep into the tree behind him. He activated his bloodline limit, the world almost seeming to slow down around him. He watched as the man dropped the scroll behind him, flipping through hand seals. Naruto could see the jutsu coming through the hand seals of his own and prepared his in return. Doton, Dangon no Jutsu. Suiton, Suidan no Jutsu. The streams of water from his hands collided with the approaching rocks, dragging them out of the air. He didn't stop as he continued with his next jutsu. Futon, Fujin no Jutsu. A massive cloud of dust left Naruto's mouth and soon the whole area was obscured. So maybe Kakashi had a point about learning ninjutsu. Maybe it was good to have a long-range option that wasn't his kunai or shuriken. Still, as he launched himself towards the enemy, there was nothing better than feeling their nose cave in underneath your fist. The Chunin was forced to take a step back, holding his bleeding face in one hand as he threw kunai with the other. Naruto dodged them easily, Emperor's Eye showing every twitch of the Chunin's muscles, every bead of sweat. Every move the man made was telegraphed to Naruto as plain as day, and he grinned viciously as he engaged the man in taijutsu. He hadn't been able to use his bloodline limit in a proper fight in forever, and he laughed as he swept the man's incoming punch to the side, landing a foot deep in his gut in retaliation. The dust was starting to clear up and Naruto could see the man's seething face more clearly. "Die, demon brat," he screeched, missing another blow as Naruto stepped beneath it. He was finally able to keep up with his bloodline limit. 3 years of training was finally paying off. All those games of Jankenpa, it helped that this guy was so slow. Guy-sensei was way faster and hit way harder. He watched for the man's center of gravity, and as it switched very briefly to one leg, he took his shot. He kicked the man's shin, feeling the bone give way beneath his sandal. He went down like a sack of bricks and Naruto kicked him in the face. He stopped moving and Naruto remained still, watching for any twitches of movement. Nothing. He was still breathing, but it sounded wet, a sort of gargling in his throat. Probably not a good sign, but he didn't look like he was getting back up anytime soon. He brushed the dust off his hoodie as he walked over the massive scroll, opening it curiously. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. That was the clone technique Kakashi taught him not long ago. Hadn't he said it was forbidden or something? Why did this guy have it? Stop right there. Naruto looked over as another Chunin ran up to them. He did recognize this one. He was an academy teacher. Irika, something. He was pretty sure he was Sasuke's teacher. Put the scroll down and your hands in the air. Naruto blinked. What? You are being charged with stealing the forbidden scroll. Iruka continued and everything finally clicked. I didn't steal fuck all, he called back. That was this guy. Iruka's eyes widened as he took in the state of the crumpled Chunin. Mizuki wouldn't do something like that. He ran over to check his pulse. What did you do? He tried to kill me first, he shrugged, propping the forbidden scroll against his leg. I was just looking for the stupid cat and found him in the forest with this scroll. Iruka didn't look like he believed a word he said and Naruto sighed. Maybe he should have let the guy go and betray the village, would serve them right. If the guy had just said he was working towards Konoha's downfall, he might have not bothered fighting him. We can go to interrogation and they can prove it, he said, hefting the scroll onto his right shoulder. You carry him. He didn't bother waiting as he walked in the direction of the village. No good deed went unpunished. He still had to find that damned cat. Naruto trudged to the meeting point, hugging his bag close to his chest, the aroma of ramen rising gently to caress his face. He didn't want to be here. All he wanted was to inhale his ramen and sleep for a week, but no. He had to come and sit a dumb test that determined if he got a team that he didn't even want in the first place. Interrogation had kept him for hours and then finding the damn cat had taken even longer. He'd thrown the beast at the fucker who'd inflicted it on him and expressed in no uncertain terms what he would do to the cat if he ever got assigned that mission again. He had savored the fear on that Chunin's face, but it hadn't been enough to balance out the irritation and exhaustion from the night's events. The bridge finally came into sight and he saw Sasuke trying to ignore the fangirl. You're 2 hours late, Sasuke called out to him. I did tell you Kakashi would be at least 3 hours late, Naruto called back. Why did you bother coming here earlier? I wanted to train but then you didn't show. I was busy debating the merits of murdering a cat. Sasuke scowled at him and Naruto grinned mockingly back. He slumped to the ground beside the Uchiha, back against the bridge's railings, and dug his first bowl out of the bag. Ichiraku ramen was exactly what he needed after last night. Kakashi-sensei said not to eat. Sakura sniped. He also said to be here for 5 a.m., Naruto pointed out, shoving a massive pile of noodles into his mouth. Lesson 1, don't listen to Kakashi outside of training. She looked disgusted as Naruto chewed around his words, but he wasn't bothered. He was starving. Did you eat? He asked Sasuke and the other boy didn't look bothered, far too used to Naruto antics to care. You did say to, he nodded and Sakura's face fell. You're going to get in trouble. She looked genuinely worried for Sasuke and Naruto snorted. He swallowed his latest mouthful and pointed his chopsticks at her. This ain't the classroom, he said directly. This is the real world. You would eat for missions or training, even if you thought you were gonna puke. You don't know where your next meal could be coming from and if you ain't eating, you ain't performing your best. Gai-sensei had been the one to really drive that into his skull. Food wasn't the most abundant for him growing up and he'd learned to ration it appropriately. When Gai-sensei had found out, he'd gone on a 3-hour-long lecture about the role of nutrition in health and training. It had prompted Naruto to raid the library for recipes that he could afford to make. He ate a lot better now and only had 1 cup of instant ramen a day. The ramen was non-negotiable. I have to maintain my figure anyway, Sakura sniffed and Naruto frowned. What are you talking about? You know, my weight, Sakura said slowly. I'm on a diet. Naruto didn't know. Why did her weight matter? Did it affect her training? She wasn't in a kimchi as far as he knew. Diet? Sakura looked at him as if he'd asked what color the sky was. Naruto shoved in another mouthful, still pretty confused. He knew that having a balanced diet was important, but she made it sound like purposefully eating less was good. Naruto had many times in his life where he didn't have enough to eat and it definitely hadn't been good. Are you intentionally being dense? She demanded and his mood soured. No, he snapped, slurping the remains of his bowl and starting on the next one. I just don't get how starving is a good thing. He knew she was going to be annoying. So what happened last night? Sasuke broke in, arms crossed. You look like that time you had to clean the Hokage mountain all night. Naruto groaned at that memory. The painting part had been fun but not really worth the punishment after. Next time he was using water-soluble paint. You heard the alarm? Sasuke nodded. I caught the guy but then they thought I did it so they brought me in and then I had to go find a cat. Why the cat? You'll find out, Naruto muttered. Every Genin team had to do the Torah mission and his wouldn't be an exception, even with his threats. He should call in sick that day. Good morning my cute little Genin, Kakashi announced as he appeared in a puff of smoke. You're late. Sakura screeched as she pointed a finger accusingly. I saw a black cat on the short path so I had to take the long way around. Naruto swallowed the rest of the broth and chucked the bowl back into the bag. He sealed it into one of his scrolls to dispose of later and looked up, finding that everyone was looking at him. I did recommend you avoid breakfast, Kakashi said lightly, but Naruto could tell he was a little annoyed. So? Naruto could tell that Kakashi would make him regret that later. Oh well, it was a stupid recommendation that was meant to trick them or something. He'd known Kakashi long enough to know that he had looked underneath the underneath and that translated into eating breakfast. Not his fault that he hadn't fallen for it. He bounced to his feet to listen to the explanation of the test. Sasuke ran for the trees the minute the test began. So he and Naruto just had to get a bell. There was no chance Sakura was going to get one. Naruto knew the Jounin, so he should have an idea of some weaknesses they could exploit. Naruto liked to taunt his opponents and it appeared Kakashi was no exception. He wasn't sure what to make of the Jounin yet. He was dressed in the typically Jounin uniform and his wild, spiky silver hair was held back by a Konoha Hitayate that was slanted to cover one eye. A mask covered the rest of his face and Sasuke itched to see what was beneath it. He'd been pretty deadpan, borderline bored, every time he'd spoken to them so far. I'm going to punch you in the face, Naruto announced. Aren't you supposed to be going for a bell? Kakashi replied, hands in his pockets. Was he even taking them seriously? His eyes widened as Kakashi pulled out an orange book out of a pouch on his belt and proceeded to completely ignore Naruto. He wasn't taking them seriously at all. Naruto made a hand sign and clouds of smoke appeared around the clearing and Sasuke blinked at the field of orange. Naruto liked to use a clone but Sasuke hadn't seen this many before. The army of Narutos yelled and ran towards the Jounin, being taken out as fast as they could reach him. Sasuke startled at the tap on his shoulder, whipping out a kunai and swinging it as he spun. Watch where you point that thing, Naruto dodged the weapon with ease. I thought you were going to hide in your clones, Sasuke replied, stowing the kunai. That would never work against Kakashi. We gotta come up with something way better. He may not look like it but he's super strong when he bothers to try. The clones were quickly diminishing in numbers and Sasuke took out a couple of shuriken as the man exposed his back to them, occupied by the Naruto clones climbing onto his back. He flung them out and grinned when they struck his shoulder, spraying blood on the last remaining clone. The clone started to shout about how gross it was before it vanished and Kakashi was replaced by a log. Kawarimi, Sasuke cursed under his breath as he and Naruto moved from their tree to move further in the forest. Did you really think that was going to work? Shut it. There was a distant scream. Kakashi had found Sakura then. He looked back at Naruto but the blonde didn't even blink, deep in thought. Sasuke had an idea of his own. He stopped and pulled on Naruto's hoodie before he could continue to the next tree. We need to set a trap. Naruto's eyes glittered. Now you're talking. Where do you think you're going, boys? Naruto watched Sasuke leap down from the branches to face the Jounin in the small clearing. Sasuke's plan was pretty good. He knew the Uchiha also wanted to show his worth to their Jounin sensei, so he was happy to take a step back and let Sasuke take the lead. He wanted to see how Kakashi would react, and if Sasuke could distract him enough for Naruto to get a swing in, then all the better. "I'm not like Sakura," Sasuke hissed. Not mentioning Naruto. Kakashi turned a page. "I am interested in how you two know each other." For someone who pretended not to care about anything, Kakashi was one nosy bastard. "Naruto's not here," Sasuke snapped. "I'm here and I'm going to be the one to beat you. Say that after you get one of these bells." Naruto knew that there was no way Kakashi didn't know he was here. The man took after his summons. Naruto had skipped out on ninjutsu training once to prank some civilian council members, and he hadn't even gotten to the glitter when the man appeared out of thin air. He watched Sasuke fling shuriken at Kakashi, which the man easily dodged. He grinned as he watched the same projectiles tear through the hidden rope, unleashing another barrage at the Jounin and forcing him to put the book away. He landed and Sasuke was on him immediately, swinging a leg directly into Kakashi's face. The Jounin easily blocked and caught the fist Sasuke swung at him. Sasuke twisted in the man's grip, bring his free leg on top of Kakashi's head, but Kakashi managed to block with his forearm. Naruto was pretty impressed. Sasuke had used this move on him before, but it looked way cooler from the outside. He hadn't been able to stop the second leg, but thankfully the bleeding had stopped within minutes. He leaned forward eagerly as the soft clink of a bell reached him. Sasuke almost had it. "Take that, Kakashi." The Jounin threw Sasuke off of him and he rolled, standing to face their Jounin sensei once again. "Well, I have to say you are different from the others in your class," Kakashi called. "I'll grant you that." Sasuke huffed and flashed through the hand seals. Naruto grinned. He started on his own and knew the clones they'd placed around the area were doing the same. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. Futon, Detapa. Naruto released the stream of air from his mouth, chunking a bunch of paper seals into it to carry them along. Identical attacks appeared in a circle around Kakashi, leaving no room for escape. Sasuke immediately ducked for cover as the massive fireball collided with the wind techniques, the entire field bursting into flames. Kakashi disappeared from view as the fire raged, the explosive seals catching light and exploding all over the field. The sound could probably be heard back in Konoha. It eventually settled down as the fire ran out of fuel and all that was left was a blackened field. Naruto's eyes narrowed as there was no sign of Kakashi. "You didn't say there were going to be explosive seals, Dobe." Sasuke appeared at his side, the edges of his shirt slightly charred. "I wanted to put my own flair on it," Naruto grinned. He looked away to search for Kakashi again. "That was a good try, but you still have a lot to learn, my little genin." He turned, an untouched Kakashi waving his Aika at them. He didn't think that would finish him off, but he would have at least liked to see the man slightly charred, maybe burn the book a little. He scowled as the distant sound of an alarm clock sounded. "It was a good idea," Kakashi continued, but Naruto didn't want to be patronized. He didn't even get close to punching him. Just a few more minutes and he could have had him. He'd been forced into a ninjutsu battle and he knew that underneath that stupid mask, Kakashi was being all smug about it. Gai-sensei would have at least fought him with taijutsu instead of being all evasive with that pervy book. He barely even got to fight at all. He scoffed and began stomping his way back to the field. Sasuke sat next to a grumpy Naruto, Sakura tied to a log for some reason. He hadn't seen her during the test at all. He was annoyed that he'd managed to get so close and still failed, but Naruto was in an even fouler mood. He hadn't spoken a word since the alarm went, preferring to glare at the ground. Whatever, he would beat the answer out of him later. "So about the exercise," Kakashi held up a finger. "I've decided that the pair of you are being dropped from the program, immediately." Sasuke startled. He couldn't be serious, he was being lumped in with Sakura. He'd touched a bell while she hadn't done anything. Fury welled up within him and he charged at Kakashi blindly. The world shifted and he was forced onto his stomach. The wind knocked out of him and his arm twisted painfully behind his back. Let go of Sasuke-kun. Sakura strained against the rope. You can't step on him like he's some sort of bug. Naruto hadn't even flinched, just looking at them unimpressed. He could go screw himself. He didn't have to worry about being sent back to the academy. Why do you think we put you on 3-man squads? Kakashi pressed down on his back. Did you consider that for even a moment? You just abandoned a teammate to die, not even attempting to see if she was okay. We put you on 3-man squads, not 2, for a reason. How is our problem that she can't look after herself? Naruto rolled his eyes and Sasuke tried not to wince as Kakashi's grip tightened. We're not her babysitters. I thought you had it when I saw you working with Sasuke, but teamwork involves everyone. Even people you don't like. If I asked you to kill Sakura now or Sasuke dies, what would you do? Kill her. Naruto didn't even hesitate, ignoring Sakura's sob. Sasuke is way stronger and wouldn't hold me back. Kakashi released Sasuke roughly and he scrambled away from the furious Jounin. That attitude of yours is going to have to change, Kakashi said darkly. I am going to give you one last chance. Eat lunch now to build up your strength, but Sakura doesn't get any. If anyone tries to feed her, they will immediately fail. I make the rules, you follow them, got it? He vanished from view, leaving behind only the sound of Sakura's sniffling. He jumped when one of the bento boxes was thrown his way. Naruto had already dug in and Sasuke wondered sometimes about the blonde. While Naruto's apathy was something he appreciated, sometimes he wondered if the blonde was actually capable of caring about anyone. Well, other than Guy. Would you really kill me? Sakura's voice was smaller than Sasuke had ever heard it. Naruto looked up from his rice. If it came down to you or Sasuke. He shrugged. Yeah, pretty much. It's nothing personal though. Sakura's sniffles became louder and Sasuke sighed as her stomach rumbled even louder. He piled some rice on his chopsticks and held it out to her. Sasuke-kun, I can't. Just take it. He shoved the chopsticks forward. Kakashi's gone and we need to get those bells as a team, otherwise he's just going to fail us again. You didn't eat breakfast. You'll be too weak to be useful if you don't eat. Naruto didn't say anything as Sasuke glared at him. The blonde pointedly looked away until Sasuke chucked a rock at his head. He turned back with a scowl. What? Give her some of yours, Dobe. Why should I? She needs it more than you do. I thought she was on a diet anyway. Sasuke threw another rock at him. Fucking fine, but she's still going to be pretty useless, and I'm only doing this to piss off Kakashi. Sakura hesitantly took the rice from Sasuke, her tears glistening on her cheeks. Naruto shoved one of the mini sausages in her mouth straight after, causing her to choke. Sasuke was still impressed that he even did it. The blonde was so territorial about food at the best of times. He'd gotten the other gen in his groceries for years, he'd seen what he was like. There was a burst of smoke and a furious Kakashi appeared in front of them. You broke the rules, he accused. I hope you're ready for the punishment. He flipped through unfamiliar hand signs and dark clouds appeared above their heads, rain starting to fall. He heard Naruto mutter, dramatic asshole, beneath his breath. We're all on this squad, Sasuke spoke up, meeting Kakashi's gray eye without flinching. Yeah, that's right. Sakura backed him up. There was a moment of silence. We can't kick your ass if one of us is weak, Naruto finally added, although his reluctance was palpable. The 3 of you are one, that's your excuse? Kakashi leant over to meet them at eye level. You, pass. Sasuke froze for a moment as those words sunk in. They passed? You're the first squad that ever succeeded, Kakashi continued. The others did exactly what I said and fell into every trap. In the world of shinobi, those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. They'd passed. Sasuke didn't know how this team was going to work or what was going to happen, but for now they'd passed. He was officially a genin and one step closer to his goals. Sakura tapped a foot on the ground as she waited for the rest of her team to turn up. The test the previous day had been absolutely horrifying. That image of a dying Sasuke had kept her up half the night, and Naruto's casual admission that he would kill her hadn't helped things. Her mom had been so worried about her, and Sakura had had to reassure her that she still wanted to continue as a kunoichi. It was a lot different than what she had imagined at the academy. When she'd heard she was going to be on a team with Sasuke-kun, she had imagined countless scenarios where she would impress him and he would instantly fall in love with her. She'd been the top kunoichi in their year, beating out even Ino Pig, so she hadn't seen any obstacles in her path. She studied so hard in the academy and felt that she was prepared for anything that would be thrown her way. Then Naruto appeared. He was horrible and cruel and utterly ruthless, and Sakura didn't know if she could work with him. When she'd told her mother about her new teammates, she had reacted so weirdly to Naruto's name, saying that she should stay away from him or swap teams. She wondered if her mother had met the boy. She could imagine anyone who met him having the same reaction. Sasuke-kun seemed to be exception, but that just made everything even more confusing. Sasuke-kun shouldn't be associating with someone like Naruto, and she couldn't fathom why he did. She knew Sasuke-kun better than anyone. He was calm and brave and serious and strong. He was better than Naruto, and he shouldn't even be acknowledging the blonde. And yet, Sasuke-kun had spoken more to the blonde than he had anyone the whole 4 years in the academy. Sasuke-kun had always had this lone wolf quality to him, something she had often admired, but to find out he did speak to someone and it was this horrible, selfish boy, she just couldn't understand. He even worked with him during the bell test. Sasuke-kun never worked with anyone. She heard distant voices and she quickly checked her hair. Naruto didn't matter. She was on a team with Sasuke-kun. This was her chance to impress him and win his heart. He would see her in a new light and fall head over heels for her, and then they would date and get married, and Ino Pig wouldn't be invited to the wedding, and then Heiate would kill me if I taught you any kenjutsu. Naruto's voice carried over to her and she scowled, quickly smoothing it over as Sasuke came into view. He's super serious about the right way to learn and the lessons and shit. It took me ages to get him to let me train with both swords. I'm not asking for a whole lesson, Dobe, Sasuke said. Just the basics. Only if you teach me that move you used on Kakashi. Done. The pair walked towards them and Sakura watched Sasuke-kun, an ugly feeling twisting in her gut as she realized he'd never looked at any of his classmates like that. Had Sasuke-kun not taken any of them seriously? She took a breath and shook her head. She had to pull it together. They were destined to be together. She just had to show Sasuke-kun. Good morning, Sasuke-kun, she called out, ignoring the blonde. He looked towards her and she could see something flicker across his face before he looked back at Naruto, ignoring her. That was fine. He had never replied to anyone's morning greetings. It just added to his coolness. It would be that much sweeter when she finally won his heart. I want to work on my speed, he said to Naruto. I wasn't fast enough yesterday. Naruto grinned at him. If you insist. I swear if you stab me again. If you were faster, you wouldn't have been stabbed. Shut up, Dobe. Are you going to hurt Sasuke-kun? Accused Sakura, not liking the direction this was going. The pair looked at her and she took a breath, holding firm. She passed the test. She was a part of this team too. Naruto's whiskered face was unreadable, but the way he looked at her, she felt like she was being tested like the final exam at the academy. The only problem was she didn't know what she was being tested on. Not if he dodges, Naruto finally drawled. What training are you doing? She continued. Speed training, he answered her. We set up a track and throw kunai in intervals. The longer the exercise, the faster we throw them. The point is to be faster than the projectiles. It's pretty good for learning to dodge too. Sakura had never heard of a training exercise like that. It sounded dangerous. But you could hurt Sasuke-kun. Not if he dodges, Naruto said slowly, exaggerating his words. There must be safer ways to train, she argued, pointing a finger at him accusingly. You just want an excuse to hurt people. Something closed off on Naruto's face and Sakura felt uneasy. This was the same boy who had chosen to kill her without any hesitation. She'd seen how cruel and ruthless he could be yesterday, but she had assumed that he wouldn't actually hurt a teammate. He wouldn't. That would be too far. We could practice with you first, Naruto suggested with a glint of something in his eyes. Sasuke finally interrupted them, scuffing the back of Naruto's head. You can't maim her just because she's annoyed you, Sasuke glared, annoyed. We don't have time to deal with that mess. Sasuke-kun had protected her. He did care. Hey, I didn't say I'd hurt her. She just has to dodge. I'm including her in training. Naruto argued back, but even Sakura could tell he didn't have good intentions. She won't be able to do the training, Sasuke rolled his eyes. She'll be way too slow and waste our time. Sakura froze. She probably won't be able to do any training with us. She's way too weak. Sakura didn't even notice the tears forming in her eyes, still stuck on Sasuke-kun's words. The way he said it, it was so matter-of-fact, like he was saying the grass was green or fire was hot. She could tell he wasn't trying to be mean like Naruto was, he really believed what he was saying. Sasuke-kun thought she was weak? Damn, you caught me, Naruto raised his hands, laughing. I just wanted to show her the difference between us. She's not going to get far as she is, and it would be better if she found out now. Less time hauling around a dead weight, you know? Sakura could hardly breathe. How can you be so cruel? She yelled, tears streaming down her face. I passed the academy too. I passed the bell test too. I'm a genin too. Naruto remained unfazed, raising one eyebrow. You're not taking it seriously, he replied. You're more worried about your hair or marrying Sasuke than being a kunoichi. I bet you couldn't even run laps around this training ground. You'd get sweaty or dirty or something. Being a shinobi isn't like they taught you in the academy, and I ain't working with anyone who isn't willing to pull their own weight and put the damn training in. I ain't here to waste time. Sasuke and I have goals to reach, and we ain't gonna be held back by someone who doesn't even take training seriously. Sakura looked desperately over at Sasuke-kun but found nothing. He wasn't even looking at her. She'd never felt as alone as she did right now. All her fantasies of winning Sasuke's heart and proving Naruto wrong were evaporating, and she didn't know what to do. They weren't taking her seriously, her, the top kunoichi of her year. She had been so confident when she'd graduated, and now. A puff of smoke appeared and Kakashi-sensei appeared, clapping his hands. Good morning, my cute little genin. It fell flat as the uncomfortable silence continued. Kakashi-sensei looked between them before turning immediately to Naruto. What did you do? Why do you assume it was me? Naruto snapped. What did you say to her? Kakashi waved a hand in Sakura's direction. I just made the realities of her situation clear. Naruto crossed his arms. She's not taking this seriously, and I don't want to work with someone half-assing everything. She's made the choice to become a kunoichi, and she should honor that. That's not for you to decide, Naruto, Kakashi said exasperatedly. Sakura didn't hear him saying otherwise though. I'm feeling sick today, she stammered out, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. I need to go home. Without waiting for a reply, she turned and walked away. She couldn't be there right now. Thoughts were swirling around her brain in a storm she couldn't untangle. She heard Kakashi and Naruto continuing to argue behind her, but she couldn't make anything out, not bothering to try. She didn't need to hear more of what they thought of her. She was the weakest link of the team, even Sasuke-kun saying so. She didn't know what she was going to do. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and share. Want early audio-only versions? Join me on Patreon, link in description. I'm Fox Sage. See you next time.